Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to a meeting of the Dare County Board of Elections. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and we're running a little bit late. We had to tune some things up on the technological side this morning, but we're good to go. The first order of business does anyone have any old business that you want to take up? No? Okay, so I'll move to new business. And we have the approval of the minutes of 12/19. I trust everybody's had a chance to look at that. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the precinct buffer zones, campaign area, and signage designations at all of our 16 precincts throughout Dare County. A little background for anyone who's watching is the state asked us to audit our precincts and look at how we're marking our buffer zone as referenced from the voting enclosure and the building, the entrance door to the building. And then also to look at where the campaigning areas are allowed or are being used outside that buffer zone for electioneering, handing out pamphlets and so forth, and talking to folks about voting. And then the third thing is where signage is being placed outside the buffer area. And so what our board did is divided up the different sites, and we all went out to each one of those sites and took a look with the chief judge for those sites about where those accoutrements are on the site, and we recorded those. And what you will see is our staff will give public notice of all of those locations and those designations, those designated areas for your reference as a voter, for everyone to know, including campaigners and voters who come up to the site. So this is something that I think they just want to make crystal clear and that we document it. So we have done so, and we're organizing that material now to be served up as public notice. Okay. I'd like to ask you all if you have, everybody has turned in their audits of the precincts at this point. What I'd like to do is just take a moment here for each person to weigh in on what you saw and any idiosyncrasies, any things that are not congruent with what you think the law is that we're required to do at the sites. And I do want to say one thing, my experience, I went on Hatteras Island, and I had a very good experience with the chief judges down there. They were all very forthcoming. They were willing to come right out and meet me and show me around at the precincts where they run the voting process at the precincts. And it was a good experience for me personally. I was really glad to meet those folks. They're really hardworking, and they do a really good job for us. So does anyone want to start? I can go last. Anybody have any impressions or comments that you want to make?
The 3 units that I had, Duck, Kitty Hawk, and Southern Shores, we discussed all the places, all the locations were within all the parameters we needed. The parking spaces were okay. The voting was okay. Everything that we discussed that we had in a path seemed to be fitting into the program. So I was very happy with the way we were going.
Thank you, Ken. Randy or John, you guys have anything you want to share impressions?
I covered KDH, Nags Head, and Collington. In Nags Head and Collington, the physical constraints there push the buffer zone for electioneering outside of that 50-foot maximum boundary. So I don't know how that comports with the specifications that we were given. In Collington, the election enclosure is situated at Liberty Church. And there's the parking situation there is such that the parking adjacent to the walkway that adjoins to the entryway for the voting enclosure, those parking spaces are all handicap reserved to the exclusion of 3 spaces at the very far west end of the lot. So, and what the chief judge informed me of was that in the past, they have utilized one of the handicap spaces for the curbside voting. And it was her intent to continue in that practice. Now, I did advise her, but with respect to the specifications I had been provided. However, there are physical limitations to the drive or the curbside voting equipment such that I'm not aware of whether, the bell could be extended to actually relocate that outside of a handicap space. That's one. Two, if we were to push that curbside voting into the regular parking area, then the election staff would have to cross the flow of traffic lane in order to reach that next row of parking spaces. So for that reason, I deferred to the chief judge. One option perhaps might be simply to cover the signage for the handicap space, clearly indicating that it is not reserved for handicap parking during the day of. That's one option. Other than that, Liberty is very accommodating as far as the internal space for the within the voting enclosure. I didn't enter the other voting enclosures to inspect their facilities. However, I would say that the only other issue, if it is an issue, and I don't believe that it is, the Liberty Church does not allow campaign signage on the premises itself. So the signage is constrained to the adjacent roadway that leads to, I believe that's Williams Drive. So the only campaign signage would be in that public roadway or adjacent to the
On the right of
public
way,
road.
right?
On the right of way, yes. But
If
would
I
not,
if I may interrupt, Collington precinct, they do have they can put signs on the property. We were advised back in 2022 when we first were given permission to use that site, that they can have signs on their site the day before election at 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. the day after the election, or until the close, till the
Okay.
day after the election. It says any signs placed on the property before Monday morning or not picked up by Wednesday evening will be moved into the office. And that is the information that we've been giving to our candidates when they file. And this information came from Michelle Pruitt, who we spoke to when we first were trying to acquire the use of that space. And these are the restrictions that she provided from the elders of the church.
that is not the understanding of the chief judge. Okay.
Well, the chief judge does not read her material because she has this in her materials that we provide for the voting site.
Okay.
But
So-
I will make her aware of it
Yeah.
personally because that is incorrect. Because we have been giving this information out to all candidates since we acquired the use of that space.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I'll trust that you're going to inform the
I will
chief judge
definitely
about that.
inform the chief judge of
And
that.
in my reporting, then I'll amend my reporting to reflect
Yeah.
what,
What it's
Our
supposed to
director
be.
has said.
That'll make her life easier, you
okay.
know, the chief judge.
Now, Nags Head, Again, there's physical limitations that push the electioneering buffer beyond that 50-foot boundary. Again, I don't know how that comports with the.
Yeah, and I wanted to
specifications.
ask staff about that, about helping an interpretation on this. My understanding is that it's not a maximum. The 50 foot is a minimum for the buffer, and that you can go outside that with the campaigning and the signage as far as you want.
I thought the
It's a-
25 foot
And
was
the,
the minimum.
well, that's not what you said though.
25 foot is the minimum, but
Right,
50 foot is the requirement.
right.
Anything outside of the 50 foot
It's fine.
is fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so I'm
So-
trying to rectify for anybody who watches, just to make sure.
The buffer zone limit is 50 foot, and it can be reduced to 25 if there are encumbrances that permit it from being 50 foot from
That's
the
right.
Like
entrance.
the ocean.
so the signage was fine. It is adjacent or within the electioneering buffer and then beyond. So there's no real constraints there,
Mhm.
other than the boundary that's set. And KDH is, is perfect. They're at the 50-foot boundary. The chief judge is on top of the signage, and the curbside is within, the specifications of a regular parking space.
Yeah, that setup works
Yeah.
pretty well out
Yeah.
there, I think.
Yeah. So that's all.
Good. Thank you, John. Randy?
I had East Lake, Mans Harbor, Wanchee, Stumpy Point, and Manio, which would be this building here. I appreciate the cooperation I received from staff. I used a variety of resources, both online as well as personal conversation and physical visits to each of the locations to come to my conclusions. These are a little bit different probably than some of the other areas, except for the Manio one, which is very busy, but these are smaller populations, and which prompted some questions of, we only have 72 voters. What's your problem? And I said, it's not my problem. It's just, something we got to do. But the East Lake, Mans Harbor, Wanchees, and Manio are all large enough for the 50-foot barrier and our zone, rather, to work and to find space, this according to people who've worked there, find space both for the party's campaigners to be there, but also be outside the 50 feet. Also, the signage varies a little bit, but almost all of these, well, even Manio, most of the signage is on the road coming into the administration building and then stops before it gets into the parking area, as I recall. There is space to put signage either on the street. Typically for these smaller ones, it is on the street that is in front. A number of these are also conjoint with like a fire department or some other public office. They understand that the signage cannot block access. Mans Harbor is a very good example. The building is between EMS and the fire department. There's plenty of space, but there are some limits just to make sure that physical limits that are enforced locally to make sure that there's no interference with either EMS function or fire department function. And there is enough room to be able to do that. Stumpy Point is the exception to all the rules based on its geography. If you had a 50-foot barrier, you're in the middle of the street. So they use 25 feet as their minimum. They have just about 25 feet to do it. Signage, the first reaction was signage? What signage? And I know that there is some signage and it's limited to the street. And there's private property on both sides, so that would have to be with permission. But there is room for the campaigners to have a separate space if you were facing the building, it'd be to the left towards the fire department. But there's space there where they could do that without interfering with the functions of the fire department. It's the proximity to the street and the fact that if you go too far back, you're in the water. So it's just the community. But they have worked it out over time, and I would see no reason, to make any recommendations for change, certainly. And everybody else has managed to squeeze it in despite some odd shapes and sizes, but they make it work and comply.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, Randy.
And when you say signs near the street, just for clarification, you're meaning the signs would be in the right of way?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, it would be on the edge of the streets. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
so
you
it would
can't-
be in the NCDOT right of
it
way?
would be
Right.
in the right of way on one side of the street or the other, as opposed to being on private property.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
that's.
I just wanted to make it clear for
That's-
people
yeah.
that it's, the street, is regulated, it's in the NCDOT right of way, and they have regulation over that.
And the right of way is usually, just from my building experience, is usually around 20 feet from the edge of the pavement, roughly.
That may be that true somewhere, but I'd say Stumpy Point hasn't got 20 feet to give to anybody.
Right, of course.
So it's a little closer, but that's just a physical
Yeah.
geography. The East Lake, while there's plenty of property, it ends right at Route 64. So, they're outside, the signs are outside the 50-foot boundary, but the only place to really put them is along the highway in the right of way. Because there's federal property and then there's private ownership on either side, which I noticed that as much when I was turning my car around at one point. So, yes. Given the geography of these places, they've done a great job. As I can say that.
All right, thanks, Randy. I appreciate it. I have some overall comments that might help us, I think, in some issues that could come up. And John touched on one of them, the use of the handicap spaces and how we're using. The last time in our workshop that we talked about that, my understanding was that it's absolutely not legal for us to use a handicap spot for curbside voting because it reduces the required handicap parking spaces for the capacity of the building. I don't know if we can, lean on the state or request from the state some dispensation to be able to do that and maybe mark another place for handicap parking. I don't know how any of that works. But-
I think what he suggested about covering that one sign, I don't think that would be an issue, just for that day. If
Mhm.
it means that the curbside is better served. So
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's an issue with that. We just have to figure out how we're going to do that.
Right, and maybe as long as we don't go down have a legal vulnerability there, in any way, then my personal opinion is I'm fine with it, because, we've got a steady flow of people coming through to vote. That capacity may not match up to what it is when they have church services, so the actual design use of the building. So we might get dispensation based on that so that we're clean legally. I found that at a couple of sites, I visited Chickamaucomico, which is Rodanthe, for anyone who doesn't know, Avon, Buxton, Frisco, and Hatteras Village. Those were the precincts that I visited. And at Avon, they were using a handicap spot. And I mentioned to the chief judge that it's not legal for us to do that. And so she talked about moving it over into the area that's marked next to the handicap spot that's blocked off, that has diagonal white stripes, which would be for unloading a wheelchair out of the side of a van, I would presume. So that could be another issue. I don't know. I mean, I think that with this use of handicap spots and even the adjacent marked spot for unloading next to one, I think we should consult someone on this legally.
Is there not another space that she could use that's vacant for the handicap? Because they are not supposed to use the handicap space at all.
Right.
For curbside.
Right, and with what it was, Jackie, is they had, the handicap spot was right up against the grassy part that goes up to the building. It's right there. And so the first thing you had was the diagonally marked off loading spot next to the one.
But that's not a parking space.
Yeah, I know that. And then the one next to that is another handicap spot. So that's the entirety of what they've dedicated to. So they could, if their wiring reaches out far enough, they could go over and use the third spot down.
That's what they need to do
Yeah.
because it's not legal, and I'll have a conversation with her.
So I
as
just
well.
wanted to make you aware of that, that's all.
I
And
mean, because
Is
we,
the third spot also a handicap?
no, he said the third spot
there
is a
are two
regular.
spots.
The third spot is a regular.
Yes,
That's the spot she should use.
that's right. And
And
what,
she has been told.
and what I told her, I said, I'm not the source. I said, you need to call Jackie and Kelly and talk to them.
They get all this information in training. I emphasize and emphasize and emphasize in training. Do not use a handicap space for curbside because it is not legal.
Right,
And they just want to do what they want to do.
yeah. Well,
So I'll have a conversation with her as well.
yeah, just want to make you guys aware, of what was going on and and it may be something to consult our
Because
attorney.
that could get us, that really could get us in a jam.
Well-
If somebody really wanted to push that ADA compliance,
Yes.
then that really could cause us a
That's
lot
right.
of problems.
That's right.
And like I
And there's
said,
no need to
there's
even
no-
consider using a handicap at
if there's
Avon,
another one
if there's
available.
Of
another
course.
spot there.
Of course.
Collington, I can see it could be a little bit different because Collington at Liberty, there are that whole row, if I'm not mistaken, is handicapped with the exception of something far over to the right-hand side. But the other ones have no excuse whatsoever. And it's just a matter of them putting that thing out there for the car to roll over.
Right, right. Okay,
Yeah, so.
so,
yeah,
so, I mean,
we'll-
that's
We'll
what
fix
was,
that.
that's why this was a good thing, for us to look at some
Well,
of
the
these.
thing is, they're telling you all this stuff, but they never come to us with these issues.
Mhm.
So we have no way of fixing things that we don't have knowledge of.
Of course not. Yeah. So I'm glad we could fill in that gap. That's what I'm saying. I thought that was good. All right. The other thing that I have is my last stop that day was Buxton, the Fessenden Center Annex. And I met with the chief judge there. She was really helpful. One of the things, they don't have any problems in terms of buffer. It's well marked and it's marked right now. They actually use some paint that they sprayed on the pavement and in an arc measured from the entrance door. The paint is still there. I guess it's the kind that wears off, which is another thing altogether that might help some of these chief judges is if we can figure out a type of paint that they can use. And then they're not out there like they are at Frisco, putting surveyor pins in the marl and bending it over and then using tape in the other areas. I don't know. I mean, if it works, but it could be faster for them if they had a can of paint that like DOT uses or like the Marathon uses that's designed to be out there only for a certain amount of time and then it melts away with the weather. That would be a suggestion I would have about how we mark all of our sites. But the other issue that I talked to the chief judge at Buxton about was she mentioned that sometimes, and while she's been a chief judge, communication has been cut off at Hatteras. And they had no way of communicating at all. Even the landlines were down because somebody ran across the street to see if a salon or somewhere across the street who were friends of theirs that they could use the landline. So that's both a security issue and a convenience issue. And I don't know if we can arrange something with the sheriff's department to be able to have their radios, like, so when the power goes down, they go to the precincts and offer radios or whatever, or do something to cover that, because from a security standpoint, it's not a good thing, I don't think. You know, not that I expect bad things to happen, but I don't want to be on my back foot. I don't think we should be on our back foot, you know, if something like that happens. So that's something that chief judge was a little concerned about. The other thing that was pointed out to me at that site, and I should have gone in to inspect the building for myself, but I didn't. But she said that there's only one way in and one way out of that building. It's the front door. And if that's the case, then the building is not in compliance with commercial code, number one. And number two, that's an extremely unsafe situation. I just didn't have the presence of mind. It was my last stop. I was pretty worn out at that point. But you can use windows for egress, provided the window it has the width and the minimum height above the floor. I don't know commercial code, but in residential, it's about 24 inches. So, you know, that's one thing. And that's if you can use windows if there are interior walls and a door that closes off the area to the rest of the building. And the rest of the building has to have two means of egress. So, you know, that's something to look at. And, you know, my thoughts were, let's call the building inspector down there and let him go by and look at that building from the standpoint of code compliance, because that's how to get it to where maybe we can get the county to put in a door if that's what they need to do. But I should have gone around and looked at it, and I apologize to everybody for not having the presence of mind to do that.
Isn't that the old bank building?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the bank.
the old Planters Bank building.
All the voting takes place right there in the front, right there at the door.
Yeah, yeah. And everything else there, they were in compliance, they were fine. But I was really concerned about that, having one entrance door.
Bank only having one door in the whole building.
Well, I didn't go around and look at it, you know, so I don't have really any comment about that. But I know that my guess is when that building was built, the code compliance and inspections were not as officious as they are now. And I know my personal experience as a general contractor here is that's definitely true, you know, through the history as more and more people moved in, our inspections and our inspections departments got a lot more, you know, on the ball and more focused on their mission, and there was a lot more accountability. So I can't speak to it, but all I know is that if there's only one way in and one way out, that's got to be fixed. Now, the other thing, you know, is there's a vault that's still in there, which they don't have the combination to, and, you know, can't use. But, you know, there's a safe room just sitting there. You know,
Well, here's the thing. Our IT department has equipment and everything that they have set up in there.
Oh, they have?
Because they use that building for commissioners' meetings, for live streaming, and people go there to attend the commissioners' meeting where they can make public comment.
I see.
So that vault is not usable
Yeah,
for
I got
anybody.
it. I got you. Well, I mean, if there's another way, you know, if the egress is satisfied by some way that I didn't see, then, you know, I don't mean to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I would think the chief judge would know, you know, that she said there's no other door in or out. I said, are you kidding? I said, it's just this door. She said, yeah. And so the way it's set up is there's a vestibule there.
I'm familiar
Yeah,
with
that
it.
has
There's
two
a
doors.
vestibule, and as soon as you go through that vestibule, you're in a room not much bigger than this space here in the
That's right.
front.
Yep.
And that's where all the voting takes place. So they make their circle around. They come in, they check in, and they circle back out.
Right, right.
Similar to the same thing they did do at Kill Double Hills.
Yep. I mean, it's, you know, it's a good setup, I think. Otherwise, I mean, I'm talking about the location, you know, and the way they have it marked off and all that. The campaigning takes place. The campaigners, or electioneers, if you will, are around on the west side of the building, which is in the lee of the building. So they're not getting blown out by the wind if they've got an onshore wind down there. So, you know, they're in compliance. The signage is out in the right of way, you know, next to Route 12. So no other problems down there. But those are the only things, you know, that I saw as concerned, is the handicap parking issues and the communications. you know, that's a weakness there that probably should be tightened up somehow. You know, it could be innovated. And then that entrance door at the Fessenden Center Annex was of great concern, but I guess not great enough for me to inspect the building. You know, I just I walked around the side. I didn't see any doors on the one side, the west side, and just the entry door on the north side. I didn't go around back, you know, to verify. I took her at her word. So anyway, if you guys can follow up on those things, you know, as you feel compelled, I think it would be advisable. Anyway, that's all that I have. And do you all have anything that you want to add to what we've talked about? Okay. All right. The next item on our agenda is a closed session. And before we get to that,
Can I interrupt?
Yes,
before
you
we do
can.
that? I just want to provide some notes,
yeah,
just to let you know what's going on. We did our NCOA mailing on January the 9th. That's the National Change of Address. That's where we send cards to the voters that possibly are inactive, and some of them are people that the U.S. Postal Service have been notified that they have moved to another location. So they notify us. We send them cards to verify their move. So we've sent those out on January the 9th, and we've started to receive some of those back and been making the necessary changes to those cards to their addresses here in the county, or removing them as they indicated on the card that they no longer live in Dare County. As you all know, absentee by mail started on last Friday, January the 19th. And to date, we've sent out 73 mail packets and several overseas and military ballots through electronically. I provided you with information for the budget review. As I told you, the budget for 25 has already been set. This is just kind of like a review process. I will have information in the near future as to what our next step is as far as me inputting that information into the new database that they're going to be rolling out shortly. I still have no word on the appointment of the replacement board member for AIDA. I don't know what the status is of that as of now. I was advised by the party chair that the name was submitted, but I have not had an update or anything on that from the state. That's it. We have our first absentee meeting next Tuesday at 3:00. And today we have one military and one overseas ballot that has been submitted electronically.
all right. Thank you, Jackie. I have a couple of things before we move on to the next thing. One is I want to thank everybody on the board for your good work and going out and visiting these sites. I mean, I thought it ended up being a really good thing for me. And I hope that it had a lot of value for you too, in some way, you know, so that was a good thing. The other thing is we're moving into an election season where I think the media will be more present, and I'm going to be making up a fact sheet for my own use for the kinds of things and kinds of questions that I anticipate. I was a little bit caught on my back foot with WTKR wanting to interview Jackie and me this past week. And I think things worked out, but it would have helped me to have something that was ready to anticipate some of the kinds of questions. So I'm going to make one up for myself, and I'm going to ask Jackie or Kelly to look it over to make sure I have it right. If you want a copy of that, I'll pass it along, or you can make one up yourself. But I would advise that you be ready, because any one of us could be asked at any time by someone in the media. And I definitely want us to be right. We've had a lot of change that lately in some of our voting procedures and dates and whatnot. And it can be a little bit confusing. So those are the kinds of things I'm going to take on, you know, with what I produce as a product. And one of the things, as an example, is that I got a little bit confused about the registration deadline. And if you look on the state site, it says February 9th, 2024. it says voter registration deadline at 5 PM. There's an asterisk next to it. And I thought the asterisk would refer to the early voting period where registration is still, you can register and then vote. You still can do it. They just chose not to call it one stop anymore, evidently. You go down to the bottom of the page.
One stop refers to early voting, the same day registration.
Right.
And it's no longer, that term is
That's right.
obsolete now.
Yeah, that's what I just said. And so like if you look on their screen where this is all posted and you look at the asterisk and you go down to the bottom of the page, the asterisk refers to the fact that military and overseas voting and registration is different. Okay, but it doesn't mention and illuminate the fact that early voting, you can still register all the way up through March 2nd at 3 o'clock. You can register and vote. And so it's a little confusing, the saying that the February 9th registration deadline, that's the registration deadline, and not having something referenced that except for early voting, you can still go to early voting and register. So I want everybody to know that they can still do that. Because if they go to a site and don't pick up on that. So those are the kinds of things that I want to make clear. And so that if y'all are asked anything by anyone that, you can magnify that a little bit, because I think it needs to be a little clearer on the state website. That's my personal opinion. But anyway, so you all let me know if you want to do that, if you want anything from me on that, and I'll produce something and
Oh, that should be a copy.
okay. And I mean, it could be something that could help you a little bit. And then the other thing is, we're going to need someone to take Randy's place while he's gone. He's going to be gone starting what date? This 5th?
I leave February 4th.
4th? Okay. So, and that would be for probably, if we have them all, 3 absentee meetings.
Right now, yeah, I would miss 3. Be at the first absentee meeting, I would miss the next 3.
Yeah. So,
I don't know the status of the replacement for Aida on the Democratic side. I do know an individual has been selected by the county party, and I was informed that that name has gone forward, but I have no, I'll try to get some additional information if I can, but I have nothing I can add to that. So, but I'm right now I will miss 3 meetings unless you want me to call in at, let's see, it's a 6-hour difference, so it would be late.
I don't think we need to do that. But anyway, I really, this is going to be something where someone on the board is going to have to take your place, for those meetings in terms of taking minutes. Okay, so think about that, gentlemen. We need some help here on this while Randy's gone. The other thing I wanted to tell you, and this is I've got 2 more things of notice. The staff training of precinct officials will take place on February 7th and 8th. I expect to attend. If you want to attend, and this would be pointed toward John and Ken, if you want to attend, let me know so we can coordinate. We can't have more, I don't think, than, can we have 3, all 3 of us?
No.
That's because it would be a quorum.
Unless you're scheduling
You
it
won't
as a
be here.
meeting.
Okay, so, all right, so Ken has volunteered not to be here.
I'll talk to them.
He's always first to step up on that, so. So John, if you want to come, it has some value. And the last thing I wanted to say, or 2 things, is we'll be going to a conference. The winter conference will be in Concord. I think John and I are going to go. Jackie, are you going to go to that?
As of right now, I am.
Okay, and Kelly, are you going to be here?
No, Kelly's going as well.
You're going to? Okay. So that'll be registrations on the 4th. The meeting is on the 5th, Monday. And I presume that there's, I know you all have something on
Well,
Tuesday.
registration only means if you should have already registered for the conference, and registration just means going to pick up your packet of
Right,
information and your
right.
name tag.
Yeah, so that'll be on Sunday, the 4th.
And if you don't get it on Sunday, you can still pick it up Monday morning.
Yeah. And then The next meeting, which would be an absentee meeting, Tuesday, we have a meeting on February 6th at 6 PM. And I think, if you remember, we moved the time for that meeting to accommodate us being in Concord. Tuesday, yeah, we have another meeting, January 30th at 3 PM. And that'll be in the room 168, where the voting takes place here.
And then I also just like to remind you, we informed you at the last meeting, at the workshop last week, we're doing the LNA testing on Friday
Okay.
Friday.
at 9 AM this Friday.
All right.
We were late scheduling it because we had not received the media from our ballot coder. And
Mm-hmm,
we just received that information yesterday.
mm-hmm.
And that's at 10 a.m.
9 AM.
No, I have 10. Okay.
It can be at 10 if it needs to be at 10.
Mhm.
We just said 9 AM because that gives us, there's a lot of work to do and that gives us more time because
Yeah.
we're really getting short on time.
Yeah.
With this election being the candidate filing in December, and then it's just pushed everything to the limit as far as time constraints. We don't have a lot of time to get things ready because we need to have that absentee ballot machine ready for Tuesday.
All right, so that's all that I have, and we have need for a closed session. And so I need a motion that we adjourn to closed session
Mr.
or
Chairman,
recess.
I'll offer a motion momentarily, but before we leave the topics of your report, the issue of interaction with the press and members of the board, I appreciate the idea of having some talking points, but on the other hand, I think if there's not a policy on press contacts, I think there should be.
On what?
Press contacts,
Uh-huh.
rather than having all of the members of the board willy-nilly taking on press contacts. I mean, it would be my recommendation that that be limited to the director or her designee if, you're not available and you want to make it Kelly, and the chairman, or specifically designated to someone else, so that because for various reasons, most of us are known to somebody in the media, good, bad, and indifferent. And I do think it's most appropriate for us to be pretty tight on that. I don't know if we need to adopt a policy, Jackie. It would be my preference that press inquiries get referred to the chair and to you. Now, as I said, within the office, I think as director, you can move that around if you need to. And again, I would say the chair could select another member if you were not available, but
I don't think we need to do that. And I agree with you completely. I think that's a good idea to close down the window, and so that we're not we can have a unified message. But by the same token, you're going to have people who you run into in the community who are going to want to know this or that. So it may not even be a press, or media type interface that we're talking about here. So it might be helpful for you to have something like that just, in your hands.
I think Mr. Feniger is just saying that when it comes to the media,
I-
to have
Media rep.
specific individuals responsible for communicating with the media.
Yeah, I
only.
understand that. Yeah.
And that, of course, board members do get questions from the public.
Right.
But that's a little different than the media communication.
Yeah, and what I had meant, what I meant was that, the fact that I had that event, it made me think about the fact that it would help all of us to have the right information, so I'm happy to do that. I'm sure Jackie can do it too. We can, by
And I
consensus, if
think
you guys.
if you stick to information that is put out on the state website, you can't fail. Because that's the guidance that we go by. And as long as you're sticking with the information and not recreating it with the chance of leaving something out or quoting something incorrectly, then you're safe.
There's a lot of information on the state website, and some of it is new as policies and statutes have been modified. If the chairman is offering to summarize that so that we have the same talking points, even if it's a private conversation or
That's all, that's
inquiry.
what I'm talking about. I'm fine. I think you're,
I'm certainly glad to support his offer and thank him. I was just thinking more in terms of the formalities of dealing with the press, which is a whole different
Yeah,
thing usually.
and I think you're right about that.
And that would be my recommendation. I don't know if it needs further action.
I don't know that we need to, I mean, I think we can just by
Unless John
consensus.
or Ken are eager to go talk to the press, right?
Are you all okay with
My
that?
interview's already done, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
Ken, you're okay with that, right? Jackie and I take on that
I'm
response.
kidding.
Huh?
Really? Gee, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so that's what we'll do. And
Right.
if y'all want if you want a copy of anything that I produce, because I'm going to produce, a simple thing. I mean, even if it's to direct people to the state site and to our site, to tell them, here's where it is, give them give them a URL, that kind of thing. I want us to be helpful about, the process in the community, not just what if the media is putting us on the spot. It's about just interfacing with people who are asking us. And so that's basically, and I agree with you, Randy. A lot of it, it's pretty voluminous, the material that's on the state site. And, there's so many things that are tied to statutes that, we all have to be very, very careful about.
Yeah, the last one that came out was 14 pages.
Yeah.
The last one I got, 14 pages.
Yeah. You're talking about the memo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 14 pages.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to do the right thing, and so we have to know where the information is and be able to direct our, local voters to those sources of information. And, the example I used about the voter deadline for registration, there's some confusion there in terms of how they post it and communicate it on their website. And so, it's good to know those things and to have some of the salient issues or, dates and information in your hands so that you've got it as we move through this season. I mean, we could have two primaries, if two candidates running for the same office don't satisfy the percentage of difference in their votes. We could have a second primary in May, so there's all kinds of things here that are in orbit around this process. So anyway, that's all I have.
Yeah, I would only add that I would appreciate your sharing any talking points that you think are appropriate to use, even for personal conversations and inquiries, just to help keep me as close to the truth and accuracy as possible. So
Same here.
I would just make that request of you informally.
Yeah, just to help, that's all.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be great for me, and I suspect everybody else would appreciate it, or unless they want to read all 14 pages back to the dinner table party or whatever. Thank you.
All right, so back to the closed session.
I have a motion to make for that.
Yes, please.
You've got to read all that.
Yeah, I'm not, not all of it, but pursuant to section 143-318 -11 relative to closed meetings, I move to adjourn to a closed meeting for the purposes of discussing personnel issues.
Okay, thank you, Randy, I appreciate it. It's been moved to follow the statute for closed session to discuss personnel issues. Is there a second? Seconded. I know you're eager. Thank you for your input. It's been moved and seconded. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, so we're in recess, and are we going to 168 or are we gonna stay here? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Can we take 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's take a 2-minute break or There we go. All right, we're back from closed session, and we are ready, I think, to adjourn our regular meeting. Is there a motion to do? We actually don't really need to have a motion on this. Okay, so seeing that there's no further business for the board, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you for coming.